How concerned are you about the image of Kemah?
Well, when I was mayor 2 years ago, we were a shining star. We used to brag about being a shining star, but I'm sorry, over the last couple of years, the things that has happened in Kemah, we're more of a little bloody dot on the map than a shining star, and it hurts me because we're supposedly one of the #1 attractions in Houston, Texas. That's a pretty big deal. And right down the road is Johnson Space Center. This is a big area in Houston, Texas, and we were well respected and could compete with all the other cities around the area. No one in the past had ever worked together as well as we all did 2 years ago. We even had the mayor of Houston going, hey, this is a regional thing. We all need to work together. And here, you know, the mayor of Houston, 4 million people. Down here, we're 2,000. It's a big difference, but yet we're in there with those people because Kemah was a major attraction. Now, instead of being the major attraction, I'm worried that maybe we're known more for things happening on 6th Street, murders, beating up on the cops, stabbings and things like that, and that just really saddens me, and it needs to stop.
So, is that one of the reasons why you're running against Terry Gale? Because of the way she handled the crime?
That's one of the reasons, but the other thing is that we had a staff that was very professional, and we worked together as a council and mayor to build up that staff while I was mayor. And we had a police department that was working well together. We had Chris Reed, who since has passed away from a tragic accident, but he was well connected, and like the things that happened on 6th Street, he had that under control. We didn't have those problems back then. So what has happened is the staff that was here when I was mayor, they've all been run off. We had like 19 officers, something like that, when I was mayor, and now, I don't know, I think it's like 9 or something like that. So we're understaffed, and bottom line, the staff at City Hall, when I was mayor, they were told, treat everyone the same. We're all citizens of Kemah. We don't have that now.
Let's talk about a couple of staff things, okay? But I want to go back to Terry Gale for a minute. There were murders, and the security cameras, they knew, were broken in January. Mayor said nothing at council. February, March, April, it was several months before council members finally were like demanding it be brought on the agenda. Do you think that's a failure on her part?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's not only on her, but I think the city administration has failed also. And you know, the hiring that went on with Mayor Gale, it was pretty much, she hired them without any input from council or anything else. It was more of like a dictator or whatever. But when we built our staff before, everyone was involved in that. And we actually had someone helping us to go through all the resumes and things like that and say, this is the most qualified for you. Now you guys interview them and you see which one fits the best for Kemah.
You think she gave away some jobs for political reasons?
Oh, I know that. I mean, things like, we now are taking care of the Kemah Oaks detention pond. Well, that's the only pond in town that we're taking care of. And that was done to get votes from Kemah Oaks for being mayor. And what's kind of funny is that she's been mayor now 2 years. Nothing has happened with that pond. And I actually had worked with the association before I lost the election, and we had I think a plan worked out that they could have done it within the association, and it would have been taken care of by now.
I mentioned staff. Walter Gann I think a lot of the security stuff is on him personally. But you have a part-time police chief who's also the city administrator. And this is still a place when there's not COVID craziness going on. Brings in millions of people. Can this city afford, when things come back, to have like a part-time police chief?
No, absolutely not. And that's one of the problems. So 10 years ago, back when you were in town before, we had the same kind of thing. The police chief and the city administrator were the same people. And that was back when Matt Wiggins, who's running for mayor now, he was mayor back then. And I guarantee you that's why we have the same situation today, is because he persuaded Terry Gale to do that. But no, that's one of my campaign things that I want to be talking about is that Gantt's contract is up shortly after the mayor race. And
you wouldn't keep him?
Well, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that we're going to go out for professional resumes.
Got it.
Wasn't done before. We're going to go out and then have someone help us go through that and figure out who's the best qualified. And I'll be the first to say I want to split that position, okay, to where there's a city administrator and a police chief, okay? And I'm very publicly saying that if Walter Gantt wants to try for either one of them, he'll be one of the first to be interviewed, but he's going to be interviewed on an equal basis, and council will be involved in this. It's going to be a team decision on who best will represent Kemah, because we need to rebuild the team that we have, not only staff, but the police department.
Yeah, what's happened to the police department in Kemah is, I think, really interesting. I mean, there's reports being hired, there's documents being sealed, and gag orders, and not as many officers. 2 officers left after Terry Gale's domestic incident. There's just a lot of things that I've investigated. But I'm a public safety guy, and I imagine, and I hope you feel the same way, public safety is a full-time job. It's not something you can split up.
That's exactly right. And there just hasn't been any transparency moving forward. The Terry Gale incident happened in November of 2019. Here we are in 2021, and we still don't really know what happened, because immediately that night everyone had to sign this thing that they can't talk about it. So here we are, a year and a half later, still not knowing what happened that night.
Okay, so as you know, in your last campaign against Doug Meisinger for council, which you lost, all over town there were these campaign signs against you, calling you Toxic Carl. I was on the signs too, and while I'm honored, you will tell everybody that we had no joint campaign thing, right?
Right. We were not running the same campaign.
Okay, because you know what? Quite honestly, running with a guy named Toxic Carl doesn't seem like such a great idea. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But what's up with that? Who's put all those signs out there, and why do they call you Toxic Carl?
Well, it comes from Matt Wiggins. Back in 2018, actually, Matt was on council, and we all were getting along, and things were happening in Kemah. And when we met, we all aired our differences or whatever, but everyone walked out of the meeting friends, and we're all for Kemah. We may have different ideas or whatever. But then in 2018, we had the water board election. We didn't have an election in Kemah because everything was going well, but 2 people were up on the water board, so I immediately supported the Kemah person that was running, which happened to be Terry Gale, who was president of the water board. And Clear Lake Shores had a person that decided not to run, so they needed someone, so I went to the mayor and said, who would you like to see run for Clear Lake Shores?
And you came up with someone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, looking back, trying to keep up with Kemah politics, it looks like Terry Gale and Matt Wiggins may have decided on someone else.
Right.
And that's the political fight that sort of sparked.
That all of a sudden, when I was concerned that maybe Matt Wiggins is trying to get control of the water board because it was one of his employees that he was wanting to run, that upset Terry, and so all of a sudden they're against me, and that's kind of that's the start of Toxic Carl. I never really did anything, but they just started in portraying this image that, hey, I'm just a really bad guy.
Okay, so as you know, as a reporter for Channel 13, I did stories on Matt Wiggins after the hurricane, which has always, to be honest with you, stuck in my craw. I mean, here's a bunch of people who potentially lost their homes, who clearly had damaged lives, who happen to live along a road that's going to be a pretty good place to own property, right? And then Matt Wiggins, instead of sort of helping them, tried to buy them out. And a lot of them were denied the chance to rebuild. Look, that's on me. I've never forgotten that. I've actually kept up with some of those families. Are you sort of surprised that Matt Wiggins even has a political future here?
Yeah, I am. Obviously, we've got new people that have moved in and probably don't know that, but Matt Wiggins' base right now does know that, and I don't understand it because Matt Wiggins lives in a garage apartment right now down the street here that was one of the houses that he went to him after it flooded with Hurricane Ike. It was right on Galveston Bay. And he went to him and basically forced him into bankruptcy. And then all of a sudden, this is the Judge Foster house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what was that called? A sweet deal.
Yeah, because I wish I had been able to buy it.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So anyway, Foster buys it with Matt's money, I believe, and then all of a sudden they get crosswise in a lawsuit, and guess what? Matt has it now. I don't know what it's on the rolls for, but I would bet you it's close to $1 million.
He made a sweet deal.
Well, yeah, because he went to him and said, you can't build back, it's substantially damaged. And he did that on a number of properties, and he'd say, hey, you're substantially damaged, you can't build back. And then all of a sudden he buys it and just uses it just like it is.
And that's always been to me, the problem with Matt Wiggins, forgetting whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, right? But he is actively trying to buy more real estate when he owns a lot in this area. And I've always viewed that as a conflict of interest. Look, if he wants to be a real estate developer, God bless him. But when you're mayor of a small town in a small area and you own a bunch of stuff, it's almost like whatever you do, it's going to look like a conflict. So rather than me blab, Matt Wiggins refuses, even in this most recent deal that he's gotten from the city, to do any financial disclosure of what property he owns in Kemah or anywhere else and where. Is that something you will agree to do if you're elected?
Well, what's interesting is that when I was mayor, I'm pretty sure there was an ordinance that said that when you were in public office, you had to disclose the property that you owned and things like that. Well, I could never get Mr. Wiggins to do that, okay? And to the best of my knowledge, he still hasn't done that. And yeah, I think you need to know, because when you're voting on something, I think council needs to know, is there a potential conflict of interest here or whatever? And yeah, it's a big deal. And what's sad to me is that he likes to buy property, but he doesn't want to keep it up. And back in 2009 to 11, when he was mayor, the property he bought, he never followed codes or anything like that. So we have most of his property does not meet code, and he's got parking lots that, you know, over here, Walmart and Target, they have to do a concrete parking lot, and he's got, you know, chuck holes out there and dirt and things like that as his parking lot. And it's just, it's sad that, you know, if a business has been here a long time, which we have some great businesses that are, and they start getting some potholes and things like that, well, that's part of a business. It's part of the charm somewhat.
Right.
But when you open a restaurant and you don't have the required parking for it, and the paved parking per ordinance and things like that, and meet handicap and things like that, that's wrong.
And that goes to this issue I've always had too about building inspections and safety inspections, and, you know, not to be like the big government guy, but do you think that's one of the reasons Matt seems to be opposed to serious enforcement of codes, because he doesn't want to pay the freight?
Oh my God, absolutely.
Okay, so look, I've been investigating Kemah for a long time, and I've even done a video where I used kindergarten cop, okay? Because I gotta be honest with you, I look at the social media back and forth, and it's like, all you guys are like kids. You're like everyone's children. What is this? What's going on here?
Well, it's interesting. So back in 2019, when I lost the mayor race then, I absolutely didn't know anything about Facebook or anything else, okay? And my wife Colleen didn't either, okay? So I didn't do it, but man, did I get beat up. You know, they're beating up on me, my business, my marriage. I mean, it's just awful. And they painted this picture of me being a really terrible person, which, I'm sorry, you know, we're not. It's hard for, I have 2 kids and 9 grandkids and 1 great granddaughter, and it hurts them to see that kind of stuff, okay? But these people out there, they don't care. They'll do anything to destroy you. Kemah politics right now is over the top. Yeah, most people wonder, what are you doing, Carl, getting back in the game? And I'm going, someone's got to try and fix this, okay? And they beat up on Colleen and me so much that I'm not sure what more they can do, but it's still sad because they like to tag all the organizations that I belong to.
Sure. And
they don't understand that they're not hurting me. They're hurting the city's reputation.
Sure, but look, nobody likes being attacked. Nobody likes their wife being called names, right? I would be, you know, me. Is that why you sort of got into the back and forth, do you think?
Well, yeah, because so I am on Facebook right now, and I really do like to post things like, hey, look at the white pelicans out here on Galveston Bay, or look at the beautiful moon coming up, that type of thing. Well, I get beat up for that, you know, because they're going, oh, look what Carl's done now. So they try to always turn it. So I'm telling you where I'm at on this is and I've, in my first mailer, I've mentioned it. When I become mayor, I'm going to look down on council and go, you guys are off of social media, posting and trashing our residents or anyone else sitting up here behind the dais. Needs to stop, because you all wonder why our reputation is damaged. Well, you're doing it. We're all doing it. So I'm guilty. I fought back. And I realize with this group, you can't win. They'll just turn it on another way and make you out to be a bad guy. So I'm promising, Wayne, right now, that if you see me on social media, or Colleen, It might be the moon out here or something
or
like
the
that.
Pelicans. Right?
Yeah, or the Pelicans.
Right.
Yeah, but other than that, I'm done, and I'm hoping they'll be done.
And that's kind of, look, if I'm not everyone, whatever, I wish everyone would just stop it and just talk about the issues for Kemah, right? Because I would like to see this place like do well. I've been in this area for like a long time too. So let's talk about some issues. Then I want to get back to Matt Wiggins.
Okay.
Because I think that's the most entertaining relationship that I think we have in Kemah, and I'd like to figure out what's going on there, especially about the water board. But let's talk about some issues real quick. This convention center that was recently discussed, that was pretty roundly rejected. What's your view on that and how Terry Gale handled it?
Well, okay, the convention center goes back to probably 2017, somewhere around that range, because in 2019 we went back to the legislature to fix some things to where it really worked for Kemah. And we'd gone out and we actually had a developer and a person to run it that was experienced and had the wherewithal to do it, because Kemah's little $5 million budget, which is a big deal to us, okay, you can't be involved in a $100 million project, okay?
You don't have the money.
No, and there's no way you can take on the liability or anything like that. Well, COVID hit and some other things, and the economic picture of Houston changed that deal.
Right.
And then, of course, I lost the election, and basically Wendy Ellis, who was our economic development person and city administrator, she's gone. And so there was no one that knew really how to take that project and see if we could keep it going.
Right.
So it kind of started over. And so the picture that all of a sudden a couple of weeks ago that was put out there is that Kemah's going to do a convention center, and they're going to, basically
do it
withstand
themselves.
the $100 million. Well,
Right.
I was one of the first ones to say that's just not going to happen, and doing it that way, it would bankrupt Kemah. So all of a sudden, everyone got behind that and said, okay, it's dying without a vote or anything like that, which.
I listened to that last meeting when they presented it, and it seemed very half-baked and ill-prepared, whether it was a good idea or a bad idea. I mean, nobody seemed to know the answers, and the picture may not be where it was going to be, may not really be where it was going to be. I mean, it just seemed to be very sloppily done. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. And again, being in the business that I am, when I looked at that, I thought, how unprofessional. I mean, the whole thing was very unprofessional and not well thought out.
Reflection on the mayor?
Yeah, because, well, definitely on the mayor, and it's kind of weird. I've seen emails where she's working with Matt Wiggins, the water board president, working the numbers and all this, and momentum's going here, and we don't want to forget the momentum. And then all of a sudden, Matt Wiggins going, not only no, but hell no.
And he had property in where the map was. He owned some property,
which he didn't originally,
and didn't mention it either. Look, that's to me always my issue. Is he's against it. And he may have been against it for the totally right reasons, but he also owns property that could have been taken for that convention center at whatever value it was. You got to disclose that. That's people need to know who's getting what in these deals.
Well, and if you think about it, if you look at his top 10 issues, he's wanting a water park down at the bridge. Well, is that on his property? Doesn't say, but anyway, makes you wonder.
Okay, so let's let's talk about the water board, because it brings me back to Matt. Oh, before we do that, let's do something else.
Okay.
This other development, this Meritage development, which is, been on the agenda and pushed off, and it's a big deal, right? Because if approved, it would bring in 2,000 homes and businesses. It would double the size of Kemah. Why are you for it?
Well, again, I've worked on that project for years.
When you were mayor.
When I was mayor, and bottom line is that we call it the 88 acres at the corner of 96 and 146, but it's the largest tract of land that Kemah has. Okay, and we haven't really had a new development in Kemah in almost 30 years.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's exciting that we have this possibility, and yeah, the new homes will bring more police and things like that, but the retail that goes with it is going to bring a tax base into Kemah that will pay for all that, and we just got to make sure that it's equal, that the residential brings in X number of dollars, which isn't much because of our low taxes. But bottom line is the retail needs to bring in enough to pay for the additional cost to the city, as well as putting in roads and keeping roads up or whatever. But when I was mayor, we negotiated the right-of-way for the road to basically run all the way from 518 to 96. That's already been negotiated, and we were going to pay for it with a 380 with one of the retailers or whatever. So Kemah might have been out some money, but basically they would have collected it back, or however it would have been done. Because like in Shops of Kemah, which is one of the biggest things that happened in the last couple of years, Kemah actually had $3 million in the bank that they gave to them so that they could get their financing. And then of course, all the sales tax coming in now is coming back to pay us back over a certain amount of time.
Okay, so I know Matt Wiggins is like hell no.
Yeah.
Right? So why?
Well, he says it's going to break the city. Well, I disagree with that. I mean, again, it's going to have to be managed, and we got to make sure, again, that the retail will take care of whatever the cost that the residential brings to our city. But come on, think about this. So instead of 2,000 people, we're 6,000 people or something. And those people are shopping all around Kemah and spending their money. I mean, that's what we need to thrive, okay? That's what I think, and I'm just going to say it. Matt Wiggins is scared to death. That development coming in, he's going to lose control of our city.
Do you think that's what it's really about?
I do. I really do.
You think he thinks, and look, I think so too to a certain degree, that he thinks this is his town. He wines and dines the politicians to make sure that nothing happens that's going to mess with his stuff.
Yeah. And if you, well, I'll just throw out Terry Gale. I mean, Matt Wiggins is the reason Terry Gale is mayor right now. He got his base behind her and trashed me, and she won. Well, now he's turned on her, because I guess maybe he's not controlling her like he wants to, okay? And that's sad.
Yeah, he even went after her, even had the lawyer for the water board go after her, and she went to complain about that. And I want to talk about the water board real quick. So look, I got to tell you, I've been investigating stuff in the Houston area for 40 years. There are too many government things in Kemah. You got water boards, KCDC, you got this, you got that, and people are on 2 or 3 different boards, and they have conflicts, and why is it like that? Because people have asked me, like, what is all these different people?
Well, that really is a good question, and it absolutely is true, because, okay, so the 2 main ones would be council, mayor and council, and the water board. But the water board then basically controls the Emergency Service Board, which is our fire department.
Just for the city of Kemah.
Yeah, well, it's weird. See, so the Emergency Service Board isn't just Kemah, it's also Clear Lake Shores.
Right.
Because the Kemah Fire Department services Clear Lake Shores. So we're in intermingled government right there. And then you got KCDC, which basically, our 2 cents that we collect on sales tax, a good share of that goes to KCDC to do economic development. Okay, well, you're absolutely right. Matt Wiggins was on council when I was mayor. The night that I stepped down because I lost the election, he's going to the water board to replace Terry Gale, who was president. He goes on water board, becomes president. Then he ousts most of the people on the emergency service board, and then all of a sudden he's president there. It's a bad situation, and most of the people on KCDC are Matt's friends. So, I mean, he's got a pretty good club.
So you and I have something in common. We have both filed criminal complaints against Matt Wiggins.
Correct.
And I didn't mind because that he was using, no question, using the resources of the water board, the postage, taking advantage as a government official of a resource he would not have otherwise, to send out letters in water bills that attacked me. And I know you did it probably because he attacked you.
Right.
But let's talk about that real quick. What's the big deal?
Okay, so it took us a while to get to the information. And of course, we got beat up because we're trying to find out what the deal is with us. And as you know, they combined both of us together like we're the same person. Right. And so, boy, those guys are really running up the bills. But it took us a while because they don't want to give up the information. Open records is our right to ask for, and when we ask for them, they need to give them up. Well, just recently, probably in the last 6 weeks, we finally got the bills from the company that actually sends out the letters.
Really?
Okay, yeah. So it's interesting. We always thought, well, the postage has got to be more. The postage stays the same, but I think it was in January. Right. So Matt Wiggins would have gone in May of 19. Well, I think it was in January of 2020 when we have the election going on, where I was running against Doug Meisinger, right, who was the secretary of the water board. Right. Okay. Anyway, Matt Wiggins starts in sending out a letter in the water board, specifically trashing you. Yep. Sometimes everyone trashed me in some way with total lies. Okay. Well, recently we found out that they break that bill down, and so we have like six months of the bill, and it goes down, and where we finally caught the difference is there's a charge for extra pages, folding, and typing.
True, really?
And things like that.
Well, you're a better investigator than I am then.
Well,
I don't know
it's interesting. It adds up to a little bit more than $6,000.
Really?
To basically trash me. And we've responded a number of times saying, here's the real facts. You need to retract. Well, it never happened. So we sent it to ethics. So there's 4 ethics that have stuck against Matt Wiggins and the water board because they are using public funds to influence an election. And there's no question they influenced my election with Doug Meisinger. And Doug Meisinger sit there and let it happen. And quite frankly, one of the last letters our attorney sent to them basically said, your board approves the bills every month. So they knew they were paying more to send those letters out. But they approved it.
Yeah, we were investigating some stuff at the water board when all of a sudden they jacked up the bills for Kemah Fire Department for a lot of businesses that were sort of right outside the city, but in the zone, or however you guys do your stuff there. And Matt Wiggins apparently by himself had made changes, which is clearly not the way it's supposed to be done. And then we looked at the document they sent us, and all those changes would have seriously changed things, right? And a lot of them were wrong. Now, they weren't implemented, and I don't understand that either, but I do know that what Matt Wiggins did, and everyone voted for without even looking at it,
right?
Which is insane, could have had a real dramatic effect. And when they raised the water, they didn't even tell anybody in advance, which is kind of one of my things. If you're going to get ready to jack the people up, you ought to tell them, right? So they're doing all that. Matt Wiggins then, I guess, says, okay, we'll audit all my properties, right?
Mm-hmm. Nothing's happened.
I mean, it's been look, I'm not trying to rush them, but I do think the auditor should give his report. But I'll tell you, he's having trouble in part because they can't figure out who sets the water rates. That's why.
Yeah.
Something else I'll tell you, you probably don't know. The Galveston DA's office tells me that they've called in outside help on this investigation of the water board letters. But look, just go back real quick. You're not going to be, your wife, your cousin, whoever, ain't going to be doing any more stuff on Facebook. You want everyone to stop the nasty stuff.
I absolutely do, yes.
Okay. Look, you lost in 2019, and you tell me you guys were doing a great job, everyone was getting along and stuff like that. But you lost, and I think you know the reason why. Right? You know the reason why.
Well, social media is what I think it is.
But the subject, look, I've gone back and looked at the TV stories. I wasn't really, I wasn't really covering
Teresa Vasquez Evans issue.
Look, I think, I make myself a self-proclaimed expert on things.
Okay.
Look, I think that beat you up. And you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And for folks who don't remember, essentially you're accused of beating up on a woman because she was having her woman stuff.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to be careful because you don't know these days, right? And no matter what the facts were, that was the bottom line. Carl's a bully, beating up on a woman over woman stuff, right? Because she was under the weather one day. Here's your chance. What happened there?
Well, that's one thing that I look back on, and it might have been different if we had handled it differently. But let's go back to would have been July of what would have had to be July of 18. Okay, we had a special meeting to listen to a consultant about something that he had prepared for Kemah. So it was a special meeting. Right. So the meeting before, which was a regular meeting, I canvassed council and I said, does this date work? Everyone said, it does.
And the guy was charging y'all for coming. So that's why you were making sure, hey.
Well, yeah, we had paid him to do the presentation, then we were going to have to pay him to come and give the presentation.
Okay, what happened?
Well, so the night of the presentation, so it was interesting. Before that, one of the council members had an excused absence going to New Orleans.
So you were getting close on quorum. You were concerned about quorum.
So we were down to 4.
So what happened in the afternoon, though, or at the meeting?
Okay, so again, going into the day of the meeting, we knew we had supposedly 4.
Sure.
And we were discussing that one of our council members had a meeting that night for our ambulance service, which was having problems. So we're trying to go, does she go to that, which puts us down to 3,
right? And
which
that's
would
it.
still be which is still a quorum.
But that's it. You can't get any lower than that. Okay?
And we knew one person wasn't for sure. So we were down to Teresa Vasquez Evans and Matt Wiggins, which had both told us a couple of weeks before they were open.
Okay.
Well, about 3:34 range, and I don't have all the facts specifically,
Sure.
but they were calling Wendy Ellis, the city administrator, going, I think it was Teresa called first saying, I'm not going to be at the meeting. That's all it was.
Okay.
I'm not going to be at the meeting.
Okay.
Okay. And so we're going, okay, she's calling, Wendy Ellis is calling me, do we pull the council member back from the ambulance meeting? Because then we would have a quorum with Matt and...
Sure.
So, but what happens is, I don't think we ever heard from Matt Wiggins. He talked to Teresa Vasquez Evans and she told him we weren't going to have a quorum, so he just didn't show up.
Okay.
So we're sitting there, I was there and the one council member was there and the gentleman that was going to give the presentation was there, and we had to cancel the meeting.
Okay. So the meeting gets canceled.
Yeah.
So like, when did it devolve, and I use that word devolve, from that into this whole thing about menstrual cycles and investigating council members and all that kind of stuff?
So, okay, remember the meeting that had to be canceled
Right.
for lack of quorum was in July. Well, okay, we're going into January 2019, which May of 19 is the mayor election.
I smell an election coming, right?
The election's
Okay, got it.
coming, so all of a sudden Matt Wiggins starts putting things on the agenda. Corruption. Carl and Wendy, we want you to pay the $800 because you didn't cancel this presentation.
So they were coming after you to pay for what was clearly a city
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
And so I imagine, sort of having a sense of your answers, that you decided to sort of fight back, sort of like you do over the social media stuff.
Okay, so I don't remember what happened at each meeting, but
Right.
it went on for 5 months with this thing on there and other things
Right.
to basically make me look like I'm some kind of bad guy.
Right.
So anyway, about the 4th time, they, Teresa and Matt's going, you need to pay for this because you didn't cancel the meeting. You should have known to cancel the meeting. Well, I just didn't have the information to get her done in time,
Sure.
okay? So anyway, about the 4th time, I finally told our city attorney, I said, would you find out where Matt and Teresa were that night? Because if they want me to pay for this, it seems to me they caused not having a quorum, not me not knowing to cancel the meeting.
Do you think you have the look? I sort of get why you'd want to do it, but hindsight, do you now say, well, look, they were elected too, they have their responsibilities, I have mine, or do you have any regrets about that part of this?
Not at this point.
Okay.
So anyway, and this is an email chain between our city attorney and me
Okay.
and Teresa and Matt.
Okay.
So it's an email chain. And finally, after about 2 or 3 emails, Teresa finally goes, I was sick that week. And I go, oh, okay. Now you got to remember, this is like over 6 months after the meeting
Yeah.
that I'm just finding out she was sick that month.
But didn't she also then explain to you in detail that personally I didn't think was necessary, that she had menstrual issues?
Well, here's how kind of that happened.
Okay.
Is that she said I'm sick that week, and I'm just kind of sitting here going, well, why wouldn't you have just said that 6 months ago? Just said I'm sick, I can't make the meeting. We would all been good to go.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. I mean, But anyway, so in that same chain, Matt's going, well, I'll tell you at the meeting where I was. Okay, well, so this is where I made a mistake, okay? As I look back on it now,
Sure.
which I probably kind of hadn't done.
I don't ever make mistakes, so I would be
Well, I
interested to hear
know,
this.
and really, I am sorry that I ended up doing it, but I was frustrated, okay? Keeping it on the agenda, corruption, and all this kind of stuff, it was all political, had nothing to do with running our meetings and stuff in the city of Kemah. But so I shot back when Teresa goes, I was sick that week, I shot back. Well, great. If you won't mind if I just kind of check that out, will you?
Yeah.
And she goes, absolutely. You just check it out, because if you don't think menstrual cramps are a problem, you just check that out.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, menstrual cramps. Oh, so, sorry, I'm good friends with, the person that might know that. So,
Yeah, look, you checked her out,
yeah,
right?
I checked her out.
Yeah, but look, I try to be fair here. It looks, at least from the TV coverage, right, that you were sort of like making fun of her in some way because of like lady stuff, and I think that's what hurt you.
Oh yeah, I agree, and it still hurt me today. But the TV did a real good job of one-siding this thing.
Sure.
They didn't kind of give all the facts.
And understand the politics and the attacks that preceded it.
I think if you go back and look, I wasn't raising my voice or anything else in that meeting. I just said, now, Teresa, the people don't know out here, so you were sick that week.
You
right?
became suspicious that they had intentionally, her and Matt, skipped the meeting just to cause you trouble.
Yeah.
Look, I got to tell you something. I do a lot of media strategy stuff, and look, they got you.
Yeah,
right?
they did.
They played you. But whether honestly or dishonestly, that became the whole campaign. That Carl is such a bad guy that he's willing to attack a woman.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you fix that? How do you repair that?
I don't know. You want to go back and go, look, Teresa, when I asked if you were sick that week, you said yes, but you weren't sick, okay? And you kind of lied to council and our city attorney, but that all kind of went by the wayside. I was a bad guy, and I still am on that subject, and all I can say is I apologize. I apologize to everybody out there, the city of Kemah. So I messed that up, but bottom line is it was a tough time right then, because Matt Wiggins was just loading those council meetings with things to, get people. When you go corruption, well, where's the corruption? There was no corruption. There wasn't any of that.
Okay, so now and I'll close up with this. So now we have you, Matt Wiggins, Terry Gale, running for mayor. Look, people are going to think I'm biased. I've clearly done investigative stories on Matt Wiggins. I've done stories on Terry Gale because of all the crime stuff. And I had done investigations prior to you being mayor. I actually had moved on for a long time. And I haven't done any investigative stories on you, quite honestly, because, other than the, third grade stuff with like what your bathroom looks like and how mean you are and who wants to fight who, which I think is all silly, no one's actually brought me anything credible on you. And let me tell you what, the one thing they say about you, the other thing, is okay, Carl wants to be mayor, so I guess that you could use your mayor title to get government contracts in other places. And, having covered, like the Cypress Creek EMS scandal, right? And ESDs, where your architect company builds things, you guys have a lot of government stuff without you being mayor. So I'm not like defending you, but what do you say to that?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because so we've been in business 44 years, and let's see, I would have been, 35 or so years being in business before I ever got into being a council member or being mayor. And quite frankly, we built up, I think, a very successful business, and you do it off of, your reputation. I mean, if you're doing a $50 million building for someone, you better get it right, okay? Or you're not doing another one.
That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
only a $50 million building.
Yeah,
Right.
Our business is different than, we do a lot of schools too, and
Sure.
we make presentations to say that if you're a student and you have a teacher, and the teacher gets you to go from C work to B work, everyone's high-fiving. But I'm telling you what, if you're an architect, you better deliver A, period.
Right.
Or it's going to hurt your business. So anyway, I had my reputation, and people don't understand government contracts. You have to go through an RFQ process, okay? And there's different things that they look at. How long have you been in business?
Sure.
Have you done this type of work before? What's your track record on it? Do you get projects and budget? There's a lot of things that they ask. And so eventually, to get a project, there may be 20 people going after it.
Yeah,
okay?
it's always my experience.
So, I can tell you right now, I've never gotten a project because I was mayor.
We see, as a guy who investigates a lot of that kind of stuff, when you see somebody who's never been an architect, and all of a sudden they are an architect and they get all these government contracts. Okay, that's sort of something that smells a little funky, right? Yeah, I think it's much harder to make that case if somebody's been doing something for 30, 40 years, a lot of government stuff, and then they happen to be mayor, right, of a small town, and to suggest that somehow gets them more successful than they already are, to me it's a hard sell, I'll be honest with you. If someone brought me something tomorrow where they said, here's the evidence, then I'll come back and we'll have another today. Let me end with this. Why you? And you live in a nice house, you're a successful guy, and why do you want to be mayor again?
Well, again, going back to when I was mayor, things were pretty good in Kemah. And never before had the Clear Lake area worked together. We always, each city was butting heads.
Right.
Well, all 13 area mayors, we became friends. Quite frankly, I miss that because they were friends. Okay, I made a lot of friends as mayor.
Sure.
And quite frankly, people go, well, your business benefited. No, I spent a lot of time being mayor, and it hurt my business more than anything.
You get paid to be mayor?
No.
Really?
No.
Okay, I've never been one for a free job, but go ahead.
I was the type of mayor that, number one, I'm not a go out to lunch type person very often, but if Colleen and I went to some convention or something like that, the only thing the city paid for was whatever the registration fee was and the base rate of the room. I paid for all my meals and everything else. I always did that.
Right.
Because I didn't want to be influenced that, I'm taking money from the city or anything like that.
What do you want for Kemah? What do you want this town? If you go back, get back in, what's going to be your thing? What do you want to do?
Well, let's just kind of start with 6th Street, which is kind of the one that kind of has hurt our reputation.
Yeah.
So I've been visiting with people, and I think we have a solution, okay? I just need to be mayor to make that happen.
Okay.
And then I want to bring back the Gold Star again. There's little things like Kemah's a golf cart city, okay? Well, that got kind of cut off because of the 146.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's a big deal. 146 expansion, trying not to let it hurt our city. But golf carts, I've got a solution to that. They took our boat ramp when they put 146 in. We need to get that back. Everything just kind of stopped.
Right.
Let's all start working together and let's make something happen in Kemah, and let's do it. Let's build back our staff. Let's build back our police department, and really drainage is a big deal in Kemah. And I have some good ideas on that. We have a $5 million budget with a $15 or $16 million drainage problem. Well, okay.
Oops.
In Kemah, we don't borrow money. Okay, we pay cash for everything. And that's the other thing I want to make sure. When I was mayor, we lowered property tax by 5 cents. We had enough money in the bank to cover us for 1 year, which we need to continue to do. All those things. We were financially stable. And anyway, I'd like to bring those things back to our city. The city that when you walk into City Hall, everyone's glad you're there. If you call City Hall, someone answers the phone. Those type of things, just the basic.
Right.
A small town. I grew up in a small town about the size of Kemah, okay? And quite frankly, I've gone through my life, luckily, giving back to my community and things like that. And because, again, if you have your own business, reputation is everything. I have been bruised so bad the last couple of years that it's just a little tough to take, but hey, here I am because I think Kemah can get back to the way it was, and I think I'm the right one to do that.